Okay, finally, we're with our fellow John Shortland in Brisbane and been talking about the deportation of many people from Aotearoa, including many of our whānau who've been deported either because they've got a criminal offence over there or a criminal offence back here, are now being confronted with a government who's sending them home. Okay, the section, apparently 501 of the Migration Act, okay, has cancelled the visas of over 200 Australian resident New Zealanders. Doing so mandates the deportation, but many such deportees have little contact with whānau in Aotearoa. So that's a big take. When you've moved your whānau, sometimes you've been there for 2 or 3 generations and have no contact or no hono to whānau back here. You're actually putting them into a very vulnerable situation when they come home.
Families that I am familiar with in New Zealand, they're causing just as much destruction in New Zealand, having been deported back to New Zealand, as they, I suppose, we're doing over here. So, you know, they only do what they know, and if they haven't got anywhere to go, what else can you expect of them?
Aye, tika marika. Okay, part of that is the reconnection back to Aotearoa. I know that you've been part of a group that's formed for our many tangata Māori living in Australia and planning a trip home to engage. I know we've had the Minister of Treaty Settlement over there. We've had our Prime Minister there. So there's been some sort of hono that has happened with the present government, and you're heading home in the new year, bringing hopefully whānau home as part of the group. So what is the purpose of your kaupapa when you return home?
Well, we've had the Waikato Tainui group come here last month. Prior to that, Te Nehe Nui of Maniapoto was here a couple of weeks before that, and they brought their ideas to their own people here in Brisbane, and they asked for ideas from them so that they could re-engage. They've been apart for too long, like 11 years before Waikato Tainui were last here, and Te Nehe Nui of Maniapoto, they've never been here. So one came with a treaty settlement of $200 million that they haven't signed off yet in Parliament, and the other one has a balance from 200 million up to 2 billion now, and they came here looking for to stock up their employees in New Zealand. So they have a place in Hamilton, which is an inland port, which is looking for 12,000 employees. So, you know, there's huge scope on both sides of the Tasman.
But as well, we've also got people who are leaving Aotearoa. Going back to Aussie, I've spoken to lots of people who came home during the COVID thinking that it wasn't a safe place to be away. They came home, and they're all heading back over there because they do maintain that, number one, you got better wages over there and a better standard of living. And New Zealand has become known as having one of the worst standards of living in the world, the dearest food prices and a whole lot of that. So on one hand, you've got people returning home, and on the other hand, you've got people actually returning back to a place they know that guarantees a lot more money, but also a better way of life, John.
Well, what we're trying to establish in Logan City, Queensland, Australia, is the capacity between those in New Zealand and us here in Australia of transferability of skills, so that in such a way that they qualify on both sides of the Tasman and they don't have to have huge adjustments in their skills before they can be employed at the same level once they go on either side of the Tasman. So transferability of skills is really one of the focuses that we're trying to create, so that people can move quite more freer between the two countries.
Yes, well, that's the plan, John, and with the new Labour Party taking hold in Australia again with the new Prime Minister being Labour as well. There's the prospects of being able to work a lot more with the government here. We know that we have lots of our whānau live over in Australia, lots of come backwards and forth happening here between there and here. And in lots of ways, we're dependent on people coming home to fill the gaps with employment. There's a huge shortage of labour here, and they're wanting to import people from overseas. Yeah, so it's a whole other space.
Well, that's really the benefit of whanaungatanga, whakawhanaungatanga, and really families can have what you would call a paid holiday rather than a holiday and spend all their money and come home broke, whichever way side they go. So the opportunity of having transferability of skills, the opportunity of having a holiday while earning money is probably a frontier that we should continually explore.
Oh, Tika Manukau, and I always thought that, when our whānau left their homelands, that there was such an opportunity, particularly with the prospects of better jobs, a lot more money to be made, that there's opportunities for those who are away to actually be able to contribute back home in some way, in some financial way. If you're unable to be here in person, well, your contributions, financial contributions, are certainly appreciated from us who sometimes struggle with the basic things like maintaining our marae and doing the things that are basic to our role to manaki, tangata, and all those things, John?
Well, preferably, while we cannot and will not be able to call it a marae, but we could call it a place to call home. Now, we need many of those models built here in Australia rather than call it a marae, a place to call home. And inside that place to call home is where the diversity of cultures can congregate, and then I think we might get somewhere to reconnecting with each other on both sides of the Tasman.